So what we have here, what is presented to us is a very simple looking rig. We've got this one thing here. Now, if you were to start going down through the outliner, you would see a lot more underneath the hood, and that's kind of what I want to take a look at. But we're going to go into the hypergraph. But I just want you to appreciate how kind of cleaned up this is, because there is a lot that goes into even something this simple. So I'm going to go to Windows, General Editor, Hypergraph Hierarchy. And for that one simple bouncing ball, this is the nodes that it takes. And yeah, so part of this is that you can see here all of these. All right, so I'm actually going to, give me one second. There we go, just reordering my screen so that it would be easy to see the hypergraph and what's going on here. So some of these nodes are just these different balls. So technically what's happening is that each of those pieces of geometry is a different piece. Each of these choices is a completely different piece of geometry. If I switch this from basic to football 2, it makes a different piece of geometry visible. They're all of them always there. So whenever you move something and you squash it and stretch it, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them always squashing and stretching and bouncing around. They're always there. They're always following all the instructions, all the same instructions, but we can only see one of them at a time. So this control is set up to only show a few certain things. Let's see, let's put it back to basic. There we go. They're all under a group. You're going to see a lot of groups in this. You'll see that all these groups, everything is locked. If you click on these things and you try to bring a manipulator up, nothing's going to move. That's a sign of a good rig. They're kind of locking things down for you. So all of those are under this one group, probably so that you could trade them out easily, because the group is what's attached to the rig. Right? So when rigging, there's always a lot of buffering going on, which is what we did with the planets, right? We had planet was its own thing, but it was under an orbit group. This is the same idea. If we attach the, bowling ball directly to the rig, that's a lot more than just being under a group. There's a lot of work that goes into that, which means adding these and subtracting these is difficult. If you put them inside a group, then you can trade these in and out pretty easily, as long as they're the same size. So we have a group that are a different mesh group that has these inputs in here, these multiply and divides. That's some math going on. Some math probably to dictate how that works, because that needs to be calculated. There's linear algebra going on in here. Let's see. We have all the controls. So all of the controls are in their own group. Well, except for this one. The root is at the top. But we've got the top control group, we've got bottom control group, we've got the main control group, which holds the top control, the bottom control, and the main control. So each control itself is within a group. Again, probably for some buffering, probably for some freeze transformations there's a lot of different reasons to keep these things contained like this. And then all of those are within a group. And then you'll see other things in here. And this has to do with, I didn't make this, so I don't know exactly what they're doing. But the rigger put joints attached to one of the things, probably to facilitate this. And there's also, this is probably an IK effector. There's also 2 locators, one at the top, one at the bottom. That math needs, the math cannot necessarily look at the volume of the vertexes, so it has to look at the locators and do some calculations based on that. All right, and then some of these in here, there's a point constraint here, there's a constraint here, there's a constraint here. These are how things are connected. So we've been doing parenting, right? We've been doing what you see here, this is parented under this, is parented under this, is parented under this. There's another way to do that, though, where you can have something controlling something else while not being part of the same hierarchy. And that's what constraints are. We'll probably get to that later. And then all of this, so we have a mesh group that holds all the various things to do with the mesh. We have the control group, which holds all of the controls. And then we have this ball group, which is connected to this root control, which is itself by BT dubs underneath another group, which is probably having to do with being able to move this into another file, connect it to something else. Again, the highest in the hierarchy thing that we can touch is the control root, which I know it's at the top of the hierarchy, but it is the base of this rig. This is the fundamental root joint control. It's not technically a joint, but of everything that's going on here. This is like the hips of this. If you're on a human character, your root control connects to the hips, even if it's on the ground, because that's where the motion comes from. So that's the highest ranking thing we can touch, but there is still one more level for riggers to do what riggers do. So even with something simple, you can see there's a lot to this. The groups are not hidden the way these pieces of geometry are because you can't see a group. You can technically hit up on the keyboard to select it, which is why they locked everything and hid everything. I want to say they locked everything, but they definitely hid everything. All of these controls are all of these channel box properties have been hidden, so we can't touch them. There are ways to get to them. We'll go over that later. But it takes this much just to do this. Which is why we're not starting off with learning how to rig. I want you guys to get used to animating with these rigs and using them first. And then once the more we use them, the more we can talk about how they're built. Anytime we start it with a new one, I will introduce you to its various components. But yeah, it does take a lot of technical stuff to get some of this to work. Like I said, if you're interested in rigging, linear algebra, matrices, stuff I never even took, even in calculus. It's way out there, but they didn't get rid of all the history. That's okay. Excuse me. So it's a different 3D world when you're doing the rigging. It's all hidden. Technically, you can get to it from here. I do not recommend that you do. And then again, remember that you can say show NURBS curves to get rid of the NURBS curves if you want to just watch your animation.